Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, you are most welcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else have you got on your plate today?
Peter, great question. So doing some writing. You know, I think I might have mentioned to you last time, we're writing a book called Breakout, with a 6 mindset model. You know, where will we spend our cognition, our energy? So I'm doing some writing. I've got a couple of connections with clients over Zoom. So doing lots of Zoom calls. And then Jenny and I have been getting our big walks in down on White Rock Beach. We've only missed 2 days in 3 months now. So we really look forward to that walk together. And it's like a business meeting, family meeting / walk. It's been awesome.
How long have you been married?
We're coming up on 39 years in June.
Wow.
We're trying to catch you guys.
Yeah. You're 53 this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So cool.
Doesn't feel like 53, that's for sure.
It goes by quick, doesn't it?
I was talking to David Black, who owns the Black Press.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, we just have a chat now and again. He lives in Victoria. And he said to me in passing, he said, Peter, I don't really know this, but I lost my wife a number of years ago. I said, no, I didn't know that, David, but I'm very sorry about that. He said, and I can't begin to tell you how many people are trying to set me up with somebody. And he said, I went out on a couple of dates. And I thought, what am I doing this for? I love my wife.
Yes.
I don't need any company. I love my wife. So we stopped going out with people.
Isn't that wonderful?
He says, I love my wife.
That's a wonderful story.
So you probably feel that way about Jenny, and I feel that way about Kate.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can be together for a long time, but it's not as easy to be in love for a long time. And
yes,
probably on my side, it's probably by accident on purpose. So
I like that.
The other book, Peter, and you and I should chat about this in the future, that's really on my heart right now is I think I might have mentioned to you, I've been studying the questions that Jesus asked people. And I, for my little morning devotion, I've been gathering those up. And then I started recently to look at the questions that Jesus was asked. And so I think there's a book there that I want to write around leadership questions. And you and I believe so much in questions. And you would be fascinated with that study because, I mean, he was the master at understanding people. The Pharisees would ask him a question and he wouldn't answer. He'd ask them a question back. Right? Like it was just.
Did he have one question that he would ask frequently?
You know, that's a great question. And they were all different. Like, so I've categorized them of the questions that Jesus asked the Pharisees, the questions he asked the disciples, you know, the sick, the crowd. And so it's actually pretty interesting the way that he had different questions for different people.
Are they all similar in nature?
Very, very diverse, very diverse. Some would move us from, you know, physical to spiritual. So he was always trying to engage people at a deeper level. And, you know, I just read in some of my research, it's interesting in the Genesis, in the first question that God ever asked humanity, which was Adam, he asked, "Where are you?" Where are you? And you know, doesn't that start? It's so cool because that's, you know, our Creator pursues us.
Yeah. Huh.
But
because there's all kinds of, it could be where you are physically, where you are emotionally,
yes,
where you are right now.
Well, and I think, Peter, it's a principle Let me just turn this off. I thought I had that off. It's a principle that that you and I love to use. I learned it from Stephen Covey, to first start with where people are at instead of where I expect them to be.
Hmm. Hmm. I think I told you last time you're in, when I would do a lot of preaching and speaking, in the first message, I would talk about the little tax collector, the little chubby tax collector, who knew that Jesus was coming to town,
Yes.
and he wanted to see him. And so by the time he got to the path, he was so small he couldn't see over everybody. So he ran down the trail and climbed up a sycamore tree.
Yes.
And the closer Jesus got to the sycamore tree, the more nervous Zacchaeus got. And miracles of miracles, at the foot of the tree, when Jesus got there, he stopped and he looked up and he said, Zacchaeus, come on down.
Yes.
He knew him by name. And so that said that a little more dramatic than that.
I love it.
This week, you might just hear Jesus call your name. How are you going to answer?
It's very good. Love it.
And people would say, how am I going to answer? And then on the Friday, when they were finished, I said, did you hear his name? And what did you say?
It's beautiful.
Did you hear him call your name? And what did you say?
Love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got a short introduction, and I'm going to open with the picture behind me, because it looks actually real. It looks like you're actually in a lot. And maybe you could take a minute just to, who was number 2, who was number 5, who was number 4.
Sure.
And that way we can get into your years at Montreal. How many years did you play for Montreal?
I was there 9 seasons. Yeah. 82 through 91. And then came out with the Canucks after that.
A question I'm going to ask you. What made the Montreal Canadiens such a classy organization?
Love
Don't
to
answer that now, but that's part of the question. Yeah, because they're different from every other. Maybe the New York Rangers could be a little bit like that, but nothing really is quite like the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Let me see. Not too close to the camera. There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
There are very few people in Canada who are not hockey fans. Now, sometimes, in fact, many times, we might get frustrated with the Vancouver Canucks performance. But I think in our hearts, we're all fans of ice hockey in this great country of Canada. My guest today was born in New Westminster, which is my hometown, and he is a former Canadian professional hockey player. And for 15 seasons, he played for the Vancouver Canucks, the Montreal Canadiens, and the Washington Capitals. He's been a color commentator for the Vancouver Canucks broadcast. And since retiring as a professional hockey player, he has become one of North America's foremost motivational speakers, relating his experience in hockey to business and success in general. Please welcome my guest, Ron Walter. Ron, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Great to be with you.
I didn't know you were going to have behind you a picture of the several Montreal Canadian jerseys. Tell us who number 2 and number 5 is and number 4 and what they mean to you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Peter. I borrowed this with a little picture from the Hockey Hall of Fame. And if your guests or your participants today have ever experienced the Hall of Fame, what they did is they actually replicated the Montreal Forum dressing room. Now, this was a few years back. This is before me. But this exact same dressing room, the way it's set up, the way the seats are, was the same room that we dressed in. Now, some of these sweaters and the equipment, it's from an older era. So number 2 would have been Doug Harvey. You know, so many, if you're a younger person and you don't know who Doug Harvey is, please Google him. A brilliant, brilliant player. And then number 4 over there would have been Jean Beliveau. So, you know, you've got some of the greats that are represented at that age. And the amazing thing, Peter, is that all of those plaques on the wall were there when we played. So it's a replica of the dressing room, which is very cool. And I wish you could see just above the plaques, because above the plaques were all of the faces of every Montreal Canadien who was in the Hall of Fame, and which was quite a few. I should know the number. But you know what I used to laugh at? I'd be dressing in the room and I'd look up and there was all these eyes staring at you. Right? Like, and it was haunting. They were almost saying, you better win tonight.
Now, who did those eyes represent, do you think?
Well, there was a number of older players that I had to learn about. You know, it was the Howie Morenzes, and you know, it was certainly the eyes that I remember were Rocket Richard. You know, he had those burning eyes, and they looked a little angry, and it was almost like, come on, Ryan, you're not playing very well tonight.
I have a picture of Guy Lafleur, a signed picture by him playing on the ice.
Yes.
I don't know where I got it, but I'm sure it's worth a lot of money today. And so, what was the number one experience for you playing for those 9 years with the Canadiens?
Well, you know, I think, Peter, I learned so much. So I think about the contrast. I came from the Washington Capitals, who were an expansion franchise and struggling to win. And we had never been in the playoffs, to trade it into, you know, not only an established franchise, but one that won consistently. And before I got to the Montreal Canadiens, over the past 10 seasons, they had won 6 Stanley Cups. So they understood the process of winning. And one thing that I learned, Peter, was it's one thing to learn how to play in the NHL. And I learned that in Washington. I had 38 goals in my 4th season. I had 18 on the power play. But it's another thing to learn how to win in the NHL. So most people say, well, you're in the NHL, you're making lots of money. That's what, well, no, you're not there to make the money. You're there to win. And what I learned, Peter, is there's a couple of key components around the differences between playing and winning. And, you know, the guy you talked about, Guy Lafleur, he taught me most. Guy, have you ever been taught by somebody that doesn't teach you anything? In other words, he didn't say anything. He didn't sit me down and say, Ryan, here's the top 5 things you need to do to be a winner. He showed me, and I was fortunate, Peter, to be Guy's roommate for a little while. And Guy Lafleur, I don't know if people know this, all of us would get to the rink 2 or 3 hours before the game to prepare. Guy Lafleur would be there at 2:30 in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock game.
Wow.
He would have all of his equipment on and his skates on, but he wouldn't have them tightened up. That was his way to prepare. I learned how to be a pro from Guy Lafleur. The other thing I learned from Guy is that you have to turn your have-tos into want-tos. Right? If I have to go to practice every day, this is going to be a long life. But if I can't wait to get there, and Guy showed me that. He didn't tell me that. I just watched him. You know, Guy Lafleur was on the ice 40 to 35 minutes to 40 minutes before any other player for every practice.
Wow.
And you know what was cool, Peter? He didn't have to be there. He was one of the top 10 players in the NHL. And then finally, Guy taught me about respect. And that you don't put down fans, you respect fans. I'll tell you how he showed me. Guy Lafleur, can you imagine how many hockey cards he signed as a player? Like everybody from Quebec, everybody from Canada, from all over the world would send him a hockey card and say, Mr. Lafleur, could you please sign my hockey card? And you know what I watched? I watched Guy after practice, Peter, big smile on his face, sit down in his stall in this dressing room, and with a big, it was almost like it wasn't a bucket. It was like a bag full of mail. And he would personally sign every autograph.
Wow.
He didn't have a secretary sign his autograph. He would do that. He'd lick the envelope. He'd put it in the mail slot. And so I learned from guys like Larry Robinson and Bob Geeney and Guy Lafleur. So it wasn't as much how you played on the ice, although there were some things there. It was more about who we became. And that influenced the playing versus winning.
That probably helped you. I mean, your skills can only take you so far, but then your mental approach to the game, which is what you're talking about, your mental approach to life and playing for the Montreal Canadiens. What one single thing made the Montreal Canadiens such an icon in the hockey world, not just in Canada, but in the hockey world?
If I can only pick, I'll give you two and then I'll pick one. I think the first is history. It's always awesome when you can be on a team that has a winning history. And when I was there, Peter, we were so fortunate. Jean Beliveau would come and he would connect with the guys after practice. In those days, Doug Harvey was around and Maurice Richard was around. So we got a chance, when we went to Yvon Cornway's bar after a practice as a team to get together, they would have all of these amazing players that come sit down. Hey, Ryan, how are you doing? So I think that the capacity of the history passed on some things. But if I could only pick one thing, Peter, I would give the fans, the Montreal Canadiens fans, a lot of credit, because I would say that the one thing that differentiates is expectation.
The fans' expectation.
The fans' expectation, the management's expectation, and the players' expectation. When we lost the Stanley Cup in 1989 to the Calgary Flames, and most organizations would hold a parade for getting to a cup final, but not the Montreal Canadiens. It was the city was in mourning. You don't lose.
Wow. Well, let's go back to your beginnings here in this province in New Westminster. You were born in New Westminster. Was it the Royal Columbian Hospital or?
Yeah, the Royal Columbian.
Do you remember the doctor or anything? I mean, obviously, it's. Do you ever go back and visit them?
So great question. So I spent a bit of time in the Royal Columbian over the years. As a kid, I was chasing a marble down a hall that had hardwood floors, and I was in my socks, and I slipped hard into the very locked bathroom door. So I spent a little bit of time with a concussion in the Royal Columbian Hospital, but I don't know the people as well there. I've spent lots of time in hospitals over the years, and I do know some of, I blew a knee, my right knee as a 16-year-old in Kamloops, Peter. And I do know the two doctors there, Dr. Smiley and Dr. Polson. They both did a brilliant job on putting my knee back together. And, I'm always so thankful to have played 1,000+ games in the NHL. And I give them a lot of the credit.
Mm-hmm. So when you become a professional hockey player, do you think it will go on longer than it does? But obviously, as you get older, some of the skills just naturally disappear because of age. Not that you still don't have the skills, but yes. How do you begin, and when do you know it's time to hang them up?
Oh, that's such a good question. I was 15 seasons, my second season with the Vancouver Canucks, and I only played 22 of 82 games that year, and I wasn't injured. So that tells you a lot, right? Like my legs are starting to go. I'm not fast enough. And what's funny about that is I went to Pat Quinn, who I love, Pat passed way too early. He was a wonderful man, wonderful coach. And I said, "So Pat, another season?" And he looked at me, he said, "No, Ryan, not with this team." and you know what I'm trying to say there, Peter, is once you're a player, you never want to stop playing.
Yeah.
And so I think I had to be forced out of the game because I loved it so much. And then, you know, I think what you and I have done in our lifetime is, and I have such affinity with you, Peter, because I think we're both curious and I think we love principles. So I began to look back at the principles that worked in professional sport and tried to really, you know, help people in what I call professional life and professional business. And so that was sort of starting of the transference of those principles.
To the career that you're now in.
Correct.
So when did you realize you could be the speaker you are and have the wisdom that you do to impart to audiences literally all over North America on a regular basis? When did that aha moment come for you?
Well, it was gradual. I didn't have an aha moment. But what happened to me is because it was a gradual movement, as a captain at the NHL level and an assistant captain, what would happen is teams would often say, "Okay, you're the captain, so you go and speak to the gathering that we've got for this charity, or you go speak to the the season ticket holder party." And so what happened to me, Peter, is I got a little bit comfortable with being in front of people. And I sort of, I botched it, many times, and I wasn't prepared other times. But I got to a place where, I could stand up in front of people and hold their attention and have some fun and enjoy it. And I think that enjoyment allowed me then to go, okay, I'd love to do some, how do I add value to people? How do we help charities? How do we do different things, and then that gradually moved into, taking a master's degree in leadership business at Trinity Western University that really launched, I had a lot of ideas around leadership, but it was good to go back and sort of, spend time really understanding the foundation of leadership and high performance so that, I could have maybe a better, foundation of what I should, talk about. I think the other thing, Peter, that you do brilliantly is something that I've learned from you and that I started to capture early in my hockey career. And that is, I am one of the few, I'm a weird duck. I was journaling as an NHL player. So I would write down all those stories, and I don't know why I did it, Peter, but I would, if I hadn't have written down those stories, I wouldn't have remembered any of those stories. And so I've been, like you, I believe in the power of stories connected to principles that work, whether you're, a single mom or you're a CEO of a company. And I think that's what's really allowed me, to get up in front of people, number one, be comfortable. But then the word that is always in my mind when I take the stage, it's not about Ryan, it's about value. How can you and I, Peter, add value to people? And sometimes that's the keynote, sometimes it's training, sometimes it's a one-on-one coaching an executive.
Would you say that the majority of your speeches, though, are about leadership and the qualities of leadership, and what most business people need desperately is to understand what leadership is? Because if they don't practice it, if they don't have to just talk about it, they have to actually do it. They have to be that leader.
Yes. So the answer is yes. I think most of what we do is centered around leadership development. Thing I love about leaders, and John Maxwell said this, that leaders are learners. And so you and I love having, a room full of people that want to get to the next level. They want to take themselves to the next level. So that's That would be the first piece. But I think secondly for me is that there's so many parts of leadership, right? Like, and one of the big areas that we've been fixated on and sharing these days, especially during COVID, is around the 6 mindsets of leadership, and how these mindsets, will actually, decide the type of leadership style and performance that we have. And then that sort of is the indication of the culture, that each of the organizations have. So we're really fixated on mindset only because that's the foundation of leadership.
Yeah. And you would say the majority of your presentations and speeches are based on these 6 principles?
A big chunk of them right now, and it's not, if people want to talk about, leadership and credibility, or leadership and communication, I mean, we do all of those. But I think right now most people are fixated on resilience. How do we stay resilient as a leader? How do we help our people stay resilient? How do we help our families stay resilient? And so we're doing a lot of work with these 6 mindsets around resiliency. So how do we develop resiliency? And you'd like this, Peter. We've just developed another little model we call the 3 R's. And this is a good hockey illustration that plays out into a cognition illustration. The first R, anytime we're in negativity and we catch ourselves, so we're aware, we recommend that we do the first R, which is we recover our thinking. And we recommend that we use a trigger. So my favorite trigger right now when I catch myself being negative is go to neutral. And we call the neutral zone a place where we are either mindful or we're in the flow zone. Go to neutral. So we recover our thinking. You know what's cool about that in hockey? When you don't have the puck, what do? You recover the puck. Number 2 is we regroup our thinking. And that's the brainstorm. That's the quick, where are we? Where are we going to go? What's our next action? How do we take next steps? And in the world of hockey, when you recover the puck, if you're in the neutral zone or the defensive zone, you regroup the puck. You have a process to regroup it. So you might pass defenseman to defenseman, you might pass D to winger, or you might skate with the puck. But you have a plan. You fixate, you look up ice, and you make a decision on the plan that you're going to utilize. The number 3 R is then we reattack. And I love that idea. So we regroup our thinking, recover our thinking, regroup our thinking, and we take next action. We reattack. And for me, Peter, that has been the essence of what I call the inner resource of resilience. Viktor Frankl talks about a space, right? That space that we have in our brain, like between, the idea of you're stimulated and then you're going to take next action. There's a space. And I think that space is where we grow our resilience. If all we do in life is react, then, we're at the throes of life. But if we can not react, if we can respond correctly, if we can make the space wider so that we take the action we desire instead of the action that we've sort of reacted towards, we've got a chance to stay resilient.
One last question. Do you take unsigned your hockey player card to your presentations, and do you sign them for your guests?
Great question. I've learned from you about this, Peter. I don't take hockey cards very much anymore. I'm an old guy. Nobody remembers me. But you know what I do love signing is our books. And I think like you, our latest book's called Hungry. Our next book will be called Breakout. But like you, I love to give away books because I think it's a way, instead of looking at a hockey card, which is me, it's a way to add value to people's lives. Now, what's on the table is I give away a lot of books, and so do you, Peter. And you know what we know about that? A lot of people will never read those books.
Yeah.
But you know, the good news, they have a choice. And the people that move on in life will read the book and they'll get something from it. And then they'll go and they'll devour another book. You are my hero, Peter, because for many reasons. But I'm trying to always catch up to you. I only read 44 books last year, so I'm behind you. But my goal is to get to your goal of a book a week. And I'm a little bit behind in 2021, so I'm hoping to catch up.
Well, you have done a wonderful job this morning, and thank you so much for being on this broadcast. We appreciate it. We've run out of time, really, unfortunately, not your fault, my fault. We should have scheduled more time. But I wish you all the best in your career and what you're now doing and the impact you're having on a different team, business teams, which might be a little longer than playing hockey for the Montreal Canadiens or the Vancouver Canucks. God bless you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Peter. Hi to Kay for us.
Yeah, I will.
I'll stop recording. I stopped recording and there is Ryan. Thank you so much.
That was so good. That was
Thank you.
so good. It was all you. It was so good.
Well, thank you, and love to do it in the future. Let's do more of them.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Peter. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Bye, Ryan.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.